Homemaker, and if you're here today, that must mean that you want to make some sourdough bread. Well, let me tell you, when I very first started this process 3.5 years ago or so, I was very overwhelmed at all the different ways that you can make sourdough. I didn't realize that there were so many different ways. I thought it was a very simple process, and because I had found all of these different recipes, and one of them wouldn't really go well with the lifestyle that I had at the time. I needed more time or less time or whatever. So I would try and find a different recipe, and then shocked at how different the recipes could be. And so I didn't really know where to start, and I just started somewhere. And as a result, here I am now, 3 and a bit years later, and I can make delicious, wonderful sourdough bread, but it took me this long to get here. And it's not a hardship. It's not like all of a sudden I was making sourdough bread. I've been making edible bread that you could eat, and it was still very good, but there's little things wrong with it, like the crust was too thick, or in the very beginning the thing would just flop right down like a pancake. So I mean, like, it's been a process, but I want to be able to eliminate that for you guys. If you have tried this already, if you have an active starter, you've tried this already a couple times, and especially if you're doing your bread on a pizza stone, I have perfected my pizza stone methods. This is a really good video for you to watch. I want to be able to simplify the process. I want to be able to show you guys what you need to do and what times you need to do it at, but also the different things that you're allowed to tweak. And I don't have a lot of time frames for anything. I mean, if you're using a high hydration dough, I haven't done that yet, but I like to just watch the dough. I mean, like I said, I don't sit there and stare at it, but in the beginning, you do kind of have to pay a bit more attention because you create these times yourself. When I say times, I mean, you knead the bread as well as you can, you knead the dough as well as you can knead it for 10 minutes or whatever, and then you let it sit for half an hour, at least I do, and then I start my stretch and folds. Well, maybe you want to watch your bread and start the stretch and fold sooner, or maybe the bread isn't slack enough. Like when you're doing your stretch and folds, that's actually a better example. I like to watch and see what the bread needs. So I'll do a stretch and fold. It'll be wound tight into a little ball in the middle of the bowl or whatever I'm using. And then, I walk away for 20 minutes or so and come back, and it's slack. It's more spread out. It's more even across the whatever I'm proofing it in. And then I know it needs another stretch and fold at that point. If you're going to do it that way, though, I do suggest to have a timer or something, because the dough does need a resting time. Even if it goes nice and slack, like right away, it is good to let it rest for at least 20 minutes to a half an hour. Sometimes people do it 15 minutes. It depends on you. Those are the little things that you can tweak. So let's get into the process so I can start telling you what you need to do, and then you can figure out the rest from there. Before we start anything though, I just want to say that as soon as you mix flour and water together, that starts a reaction. So one thing that I was not doing in the very beginning is you activate your starter and then you let it double in size for when you're gonna bake, like right before you bake. You want it to be double in size right after you feed it. So I was not mixing my flour and water beforehand. I was just mixing all 3 of the ingredients together at once, which is fine, but it gives it like that extra little boost if you mix the flour and water an hour before you put the starter in, and then you knead it a lot. And I mean, it's up for debate. You can put your salt in at that point too, or you can wait a little bit and pass the window pane test, and then it's ready for salt even more so. And then when you add the salt, it actually tightens those gluten bonds up a little bit. So I don't mind having a little relax period in between the kneading and then adding the salt in. Also, a lot of people, they don't like kneading their sourdough after they do that initial knead. But with bread baking, I mean, with sourdough, you have to be careful that you don't overproof it. But with bread baking in general, if you push it down and let it poof back up, the more that you can do that, the stronger your dough actually is. So I don't mind kneading it for 10 minutes with just the starter, water, and flour, and then letting it sit for only a half an hour, because you have to remember you can't let it overproof, so you don't want to let it sit for longer than that. But it gives it that little chance of a relax to poof back up, to have the loose gluten bonds that we're looking for. It also helps you to pass that window pane test at that point, because you want to be able to see. I did do a shot for you guys, so you'll be able to see what I mean by that. But then you knead it back down, you push all the bubbles back down, and you knead the salt in there, which I gotta say is more difficult than adding it to start with, but it does tighten the gluten bonds and it does get you ready for your stretch and fold. So, I mean, it's all individual, that's what I'm saying. So let's get into it. I have some clips and I haven't watched what I filmed for you already, so I don't know if we're gonna do some music or if it's just gonna be me talking some more, but I do want to make this video a little bit shorter than my last one, because I find that the shorter the video, the more likely you guys are to watch it. I'm calling you out. So yeah, let's get into the work. Let's make some bread and get down to the process. Talk to you soon. So, things to remember when you are activating your starter. That water, that is room temperature. You don't want to add freezing cold water into the mixture, because it just slows everything down and it just ends up taking longer and sits on the counter for longer, and you don't want that. My mixture that I put in here, it ends up being a 1-to-1 ratio. What I normally do is I actually add the water, then I mix the starter in so it's all dissipated in the water, and then I add the flour to make the doughy mixture. But for the purposes of this video, I just wanted to show you guys it was a 1-to-1 ratio. And then I just dump the rest of my starter in. To do this properly, you should do a 1-to-1-to-1, but I know from experience that this is all just going to double in size anyways, just the amounts that I have. If I just put a tiny bit of starter in, I don't think it would work quite like that. But I know that I have enough to make my starter double in size. I'm just trying to mix it all properly. I'm wishing I did the water first here at this point. Yeah, so and now I'm about to grab a spatula, clean up the sides, and then you put the lid on. I put mine in a plastic container with a lid that will pop off, because you're fermenting right now. So there's going to be a lot of gases that are created. And see, I just put the one side on there so it has room to breathe. Now, because I cleaned the sides off, I'm marking the level of where it is, and I just put the time on for my own benefit, but that way I will know perfectly when it doubles in size. This is what you leave on your counter overnight waiting. Make sure you have lukewarm water. This is going to stop soon. Ah! It's autolyzing time. Woohoo! So before we autolyze, I just wanted to talk about my starter here. Normally what I do is I put the water in first, and then I put the starter in, and I mix the starter up so it's just a very liquidy consistency, just like the water. And then I put the flour in to feed the whole mixture. The reason why I did it this way for the video was just to show you that 1-to-1 mixture on the scale, and then I just dump my starter in afterwards. But as a result, this part of the mixture started to rise before this part, and that just tells me that the starter was not as evenly distributed as I normally have, which this is fine. I just need to wait for the starter, like the wild yeast, to start eating this stuff more, because that's what it's doing essentially, is it's eating the little glutens that you're making when you mix the bread and when you mix the flour and the water. The starter, which is the wild yeast, is eating that. You're feeding it. That's what we were talking about earlier. So yeah, I just wanted to tell you that's why my starter is lopsided, and maybe when you guys mix this at home, do what I said to the water first, then the starter, then the flour. I was going to say dough again. Okay, let's get to autolyzing. So for autolyzing, you mix that lukewarm water, or the room temperature water, with the flour that you prepped the night before to save yourself time. And the point of this, like I said in the very beginning of the video, is that as soon as you mix water and flour together, that reaction starts happening. So you want to get those glutens forming as soon as possible, and this helps that process along, as well as flour saturation. No dry flour particles here. So at this stage of the game, what you're looking at is my water and flour mixture is sat on the counter for an hour at this point, and then I just add my starter and I mix the crap out of it. At the beginning of this stage, your dough is usually pretty loose, pretty sticky, not really fun to work with, but then the gluten starts to form better, sticks to itself better. It's one mass at the end. Here I'm just prepping my salt. I add my salt after I do the window pane test. The window pane test is you cut off about a square foot worth of dough and then you let it stretch out on its own, and if you can see light behind it, then your gluten is forming really, really well. You see, when I say stretch it out on its own, it's using its own weight to pull itself down. And yeah, I can see light behind it and it's not breaking or ripping, so I know that it's ready for salt, because at this point of the game, the salt is going to tighten those gluten bonds up. And after this, I'm very, very, very gentle with the dough. I'm going to do my stretch and folds right after this, but what I wanted to say too is with your stretch and folds, this is another part of the process you can tweak. This is how most people do their stretch and folds. They like to put it in a square bottomed container because it's easier to see when it is. You have to get your dough just under double in size. But because I bake on a pizza stone, at this stage of the game, I actually cut all of my loaves up individually, and then I stretch and fold them individually as well, which I don't know if you can call that a bulk ferment time if you're cutting them all up, but I bake my stuff on a pizza stone, so I find that if I do individual stretch and folds, it gives it more surface tension when I'm shaping, and it helps me out when it comes to bake time, because I get a lot more oven spring if I do it separately. But I wanted to show you guys how most people do it, except I don't have that square bottom container. So if you're wondering how many stretch and folds you should do versus how many shapings you should do, it's really dependent upon how you're about to bake, how you've mixed your dough. Maybe you're doing a hydration dough, or where you live in the world, how warm it is in your house, things like that. And you need to be able to figure that part out on yourself. But what I suggest for you to do is start with 4 stretch and folds a half an hour apart, and then 3 shapings. Well, it depends. Feel your dough. If it's still too tense, don't touch it, and then wait for it to have a little bit of slack so you can shape it again, what I'm doing right here. The shaping is kind of a work of art, really. It takes practice. You have to maybe look up a different video, because there are better videos than this that explain what it is when you're shaping. But I like, well, the boulets there, the round ones, you just pass them back and forth between your hands, and you're kind of spinning them as well. And then you're using your pinkies to just kind of tuck the bottom layer of the dough underneath the dough. If that makes sense. I'm trying to exaggerate it right then, and then I slow it down here too. But what you do is you're trying to pull the surface tension of the dough, kind of tuck it underneath, and then that gives you a nice tight surface for when you're making your scores with your lamb. Your scores will pop up instead of sinking down into your crust. So the shaping, that's what that does, is it gives you nice surface tension, gives you nice oven spring as well. It helps out with that. And for me, when I bake on my pizza stone, like I said, I need as much help as I can get. So I try to shape and pre-shape and stretch and fold as much as I possibly can, because that what gives your bread strength. But if you already have strong bread or whatever, you don't need to do this. Or the other thing is, if you are overproofing your dough, then you need to cut down on some of these steps, because overproofing, it's just done. I mean, it'll still be edible, but there'll be things wrong with it. It won't be like normal bread. But yeah. So I hope that is helpful. I hope this slow motion video is helpful. Oh, and then hope it doesn't end with that crappy end right there. Oh, this is what I'm doing. The other thing about shaping is that you can actually see, I'm about to give it a 90-degree turn, and then you use your pinkies again and you just pull it towards your body. And it seems that, you see, I'm kind of poofing it up again. It seems when you do that, the dry part of the counter pulls at the sticky part of the dough a little bit, so it helps you as well to tuck just a little bit. It's not like you're trying to squish the bubbles out from the inside. You're being very gentle with it, and you're just trying to, yeah, make it a nice round doughy circle to stand on its own on the counter, basically. That's how strong it should be. Here I'm just prepping my proofing baskets. I cold proof in the fridge. I'm just putting a little bit of water, and then I put extra rice flour and oats and the flaxseed there, and I proof in the fridge for 12 to 36 hours. 36 is kind of pushing it, actually, so maybe 12 to 30. So, baking, yay! What I do is I preheat my oven to 500 degrees. I have water in there already that's at a rolling boil, and then as soon as I put my bread in, I drop the temperature down to 465, and then I let it bake for that 20 minutes. Generally, it is 20 minutes of steam, no matter how big the bread is. I do individual, like 300-gram buns every so often, and those ones I find could be maybe 15 minutes of steam. But this loaf in particular was, I think, 1350 grams, and I thought maybe 25 minutes of steam because it was so much bigger. But you'll see in the end I have a clip where I rip it apart, and yeah, the crust is a little too dark. Still yummy, but yeah, it had that extra 5 minutes, and that was enough to make it tough. And that is what I want to say, is when you're baking on a pizza stone, I keep an eye on it, and then in that initial stage with the steam, when it rises so much, once it's reached a point where I don't think it's going to rise anymore, then I take the steam out, and that usually ends up being like right around 20 minutes, like I said. So when you have your eye on it and you're watching it like that, and you're not sticking to the rules of, oh, it has to be exactly 20 minutes, I find that you get a nicer texture of crust at the end of your whole shebang there, as well as get a thermometer that you can stick into your bread and figure out when it's exactly done or not. That 208 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh yeah, and when you take the steam out, turn the temperature down one more time, because again, you don't want to burn your bread. And I've fiddled with my oven times. This is something that I figured out on my own because I was baking crouton crust, like I said. But get that oven thermometer, because or not oven, but you know what I'm saying, because that 208 degrees Fahrenheit is really, really important. Then you know for certain that your bread is done. And when you know when your bread is done, then you don't have to worry about if you're doing things right or not. There's so many variables when it comes to sourdough that if you can get things down certainly, you know, even if it's only half of the things, then it helps it easier in your mind. And this is that extra, like I said, it was 5 minutes too long with the steam, and I need to do a pre-cut for it. But it baked fine. The crust is nice and thin. It was still a little crunchy, but totally edible, wonderful bread. And that's it. I mean, like I said in the beginning, you guys can tweak your own time process, things like that. There's little things that you can change. And you can change your sourdough recipe, but still bake it the same way that I bake it. Or you can, you know, try out a Dutch oven. There's nothing wrong with trying a Dutch oven. I mean, I know I've just put a lot of work into being able to use my pizza stone. Somebody told me once that I should just get a Dutch oven because it's easier. And actually, not somebody, a lot of people on that sourdough group, they'll say that to you. Just get a Dutch oven. It's a lot easier. Cover your bread. Don't be a dummy. Well, they don't say that. I shouldn't say that. But I say that to myself in my head. But I get a little stubborn. And if somebody tells me something can't be done, and I know it can be, then I'm gonna do it. So I have perfected my pizza stone, but there is nothing wrong with using a Dutch oven. People have used Dutch ovens for ages and ages. It is a good way to, you know, make delicious bread, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just like my pizza stone, that's all. So yeah, that's all I gotta say about the sourdough. I hope you like the video. If you want to know anything else about anything, I can make short videos. I can make a video on starter again. And we can just make a starter together. I don't think I did that from my last video. I think I just used my already active starter and then showed you what to do. But we can make a starter, and I can show you the things that will happen during the process of it being born that you need to look for, and then we can go over starter maintenance and things like that, which is not really hard to maintain your starter. But I can show you, you know, what hooch looks like, or, you know, whatever. So let me know if you like the video, if you like what you have seen, because I do like starter. I do like sourdough, and I have a lot of interest on this channel, but sourdough is a big one for me. So I would be more than happy to make more sourdough videos for you guys, but you guys just got to ask for them, because like I said, I do have a lot going on in life. I'm trying to work on that and actually minimize the projects that I start at a time, because I need that in my brain. But if you guys, like I said, if you like the sourdough, I don't mind. And I'm going to be creating playlists. I think that's what you call them in my channel. I don't know a lot about technology, so I haven't done a lot of work like that on the channel, but I will be doing that soon. So I don't mind. I would really like, actually, to have a little sourdough section. And I mean, if you want to know more about, you know, what kneading looks like exactly, or how I knead my dough, or just little, like I said, short little videos. If you just want a 30-second video of me shaping or something like that, I totally don't mind. So let me know, because yeah, I like to teach and I like to put out videos. That's why I'm not gone yet. So that's all I gotta say. Happy sourdough making, and if you have any questions, please, please, please ask me. I do love teaching, and I do love answering any questions that I can. Happy baking. See you next video. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I really want to be making lots of good videos like this soon. Okay, talk to you soon. I'm really going this time. Get ready for the bloopers, because there was a lot of them this time. Oh my gosh. Hey, welcome back. Hey, welcome back. Hey, welcome back. I'm glad you're here. Should I say welcome back? Hey, glad you're here. Hey, glad you're here. It's me, Amanda, the How-To Homemaker. You can't see it. Oh, that did not work. Okay. Hey, welcome back. I'm glad you're here. It's me, Amanda. It's so awkward. I want to be able to take you guys. Hey, I'm glad you're back. Hey. Hey. How-To Homemaker. And oh, we're doing sourdough. I haven't done a freaking thing. Hey. I don't have a color to pop. Hey. There we go. Hey, I'm glad you're here. Hey. Hey. Amanda. Hey. It just sounds so cheesy. Hey. Oh, hey, I didn't see you there. Hey. That's why Joseph likes me. Hey, bud. Welcome back. I can say that. Hey. Hey. Mascara. I don't normally wear it. Oh, look at that. Oh, it's gonna be longer than the video. Hey. Okay. It's ridiculous. I don't even know where I have this freaking channel. It's not a natural thing. Nobody's here. That's why I'm laughing so hard, because I feel freaking crazy. Focus. Oh, there you are. I've been expecting you. Serious. It's a little too serious. Hey, I'm glad you're here. I have a high potential to ruin your dough. I know, I got so slow right then. I haven't even filmed yet. Okay. He's not that funny. Oh my gosh, okay. That being said, yeah. Hi Joseph, Auntie loves you. Hi Tally, Auntie loves you. I gotta be quiet, cause Uncle Philip's sleeping. But he loves you too.